Good evening, everybody. How we doing?
Good evening. We're doing good and we have a quorum.
All right. She answers all the questions before I can ask. Can't ask for anything more than that.
That's exactly what you need.
All right. So it is 6:01. We're going to call the order. And I'm going to see if Patrick doesn't mind leading us in the pledge tonight. I'll step aside and we have the flag right behind me.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Let's go ahead and take a roll call.
Director Craig,
Here.
Director Collin,
I'm here.
Director Jimenez,
Here.
Director Phillips is absent. Director Rocha,
Here.
Director Silva,
Present.
Vice President Cromings,
Here.
Alternate Vice President Tipton,
Present.
and President Lopez.
Here. All right. So let's go on down and we do have translation services available. Si hay alguien que necesita la ayuda de intérprete para esta junta, por favor, llama al número 1425-436-6345 y entra el código 444-666 y con eso te podemos ayudar con interpretación. Gracias. All right. That announcement having been made, let's jump straight into Patrick's comments.
All right. Tonight, I just want to remind the board on March 10th, we are going to have our strategic planning retreat. We're all very excited about it. We really like the new facilitator that the executive committee selected. They've done a great job working with Eric and I and the team to work on drafting up the agenda. And I want to thank all the board members personally for the time that you put in to interview her and provide her with a lot of feedback. That's going to be very helpful in helping us move through our first strategic planning meeting in several years. So we're all looking forward to it. Again, that'll be 1 o'clock at the Gonzalez Chambers, and we will be serving lunch in advance of that. And of course, you'll get meeting notices and more specific information from Erica in the next week or two in advance of that meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from directors at this point? Hearing no voices, we'll quickly turn and see if we have any public input. I'm gonna remind folks to use *9 or *9 in order to raise your hand, or use in the reactions tab the raise the hand function in order to be recognized for public comments this evening. And seeing no hands up in the attendees, we will jump back and go ahead and proceed to department manager comments. And I do see a hand up from Mandy. So Mandy, we'll give it to you first.
Great, thanks, President Lopez. I have two items I just wanted to briefly comment on. One is that we are close to finalizing the agreement with Atlas Organics and expect to bring that back to the board at the March meeting. And my second comment was on the Salinas had their city council meeting on Tuesday where they had their first reading as the SB 1383 ordinance and wanted to help clear up any confusion on the 1383 program rollout. So we've sent kind of a detailed follow-up email to city staff outlining the 1383 education resources that we've been working on for about the past 2 years. And that was always been in coordination with Republic Services and city staff. And we've made all of that available to all the cities and all of our haulers. All of that information is included on our website. And we've been providing updates at our monthly 1383 technical advisory committee meetings and all the subcommittees. So if there's any board member that would be interested in receiving that information, I'm happy to forward it on. And then also wanted to put out there that if there's, we are available to provide any 1383 updates to any of our board members, to their specific councils. If that is an interest, please feel free to reach out and let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Mandy. I do see a hand up from Director Rocha.
I would appreciate if you could give a presentation to the Salinas City Council on what our authority is going to be doing in terms of public education outreach on this particular legislation.
Yes, happy to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, great. Any other directors with comments or questions for Mandy? Seeing none, we'll take it out to the public, see if there's any public input on that presentation. See no hands going up, we'll come back and go to Ray Hendricks, who has his hand up.
I just wanted to let the board know that as of 9 o'clock this morning, we have officially completed the refinancing process for our bonds. So they did close this morning, and our savings are a little over $1.6 million. But the March packet would include a little summary of how those savings work. I'll touch up on it briefly during the budget process, but I will follow up with a better staff report for those who are interested next month.
Great, thank you, Ray. Any other, well, first let's see if there's any comments from directors. Seeing no hands up, we'll go out and see if there's any public input on Ray's presentation. Seeing no hands up, we'll bring it back, see if there's any other department manager comments who wish to make, department heads who wish to make comments at this point. Okay, seeing no hands going up, we'll go ahead and proceed with the agenda. At this point, we're at the public comment portion of our agenda. It's an opportunity for the public to share comments regarding items not on this evening's agenda, but relevant to the work of this board. We ask folks to use the raise hand function, *9 via landline in order to be recognized. Okay, seeing no hands up, we will close the public comment portion of our agenda and head down to our consent agenda, which consists of items 1 through 5. Is there a member of the board of directors who wishes to pull an item from our consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll go and see if there's any public who wishes to pull an item from our consent agenda for comment. Seeing no hands up, we'll close public comment on consent and bring it back for action.
Motion to approve, Cromings.
Second, Phillips.
Got a motion from Cromings, a second from Phillips. Erica, will you take us through a roll call vote?
Director Craig,
Aye.
Director Collin,
Aye.
Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Rocha,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Tipton,
Aye.
Vice President Cromings,
Aye.
President Lopez.
Aye. Motion carries. With that, we're item 6 on our agenda, request for fiscal year 22-23 preliminary budget direction. We're going to take it back to Ray.
Good evening. Presentation is not much different from January, so I'm gonna go fairly quickly, as most of my presentations tend to be. But if I go too fast, please feel free to stop me or ask any questions. Just to review, the budget assumptions include a new composting operator effective July 1, 2022. Which Mandy mentioned, we're in the process of completing the contract negotiations. It does call for equalized organics rates for all member agencies. We're still awaiting the letter from Republic to terminate that agreement. So hopefully we'll get that soon. And it does include the closure of Sunstreet operations, with the authority relocating its AB 939 programs to the leased space at Madison Lane. And us using our fleet to transport solid waste from Madison Lane to Johnson County effective 7/1/2022. For revenue projections, we are budgeting for roughly half of the self-haul tonnage at Sunstreet, and hope that is on the conservative side. Next slide. The budget includes the reduction of 3 allocated positions, a cashier, skill house cashier that is currently vacant, and 2 heavy equipment operator leads that have already applied for and accepted currently vacant positions effective July 1. We'll be holding those positions for them. So our allocation is being reduced by 3, but we are maintaining all current staffing levels. And this is part of the Sunstreet closure. Next slide. Also, budget summary, proposed budget revenues of 23.5 million and budget expenditures, including CIP of 23.5 million with small balance for reserves of $15,000. Next slide. So the projected expenditure increases, 209,000 for Johnson Canyon operations. So that's fuel and other items needed to maintain regulatory compliance. Net payroll increase is $136,000. So that is reducing the three bodies, but some assumptions for benefit and salary increases. We are budgeting $110,000 in insurance increases. The last 2 years have been fairly high. So we're hoping that that's enough to cover those increases. So we just started the insurance renewal process, but are not typically done before we're done with the budget. Organics program, we are budgeting for a reduction in tonnage, but however, the processor that we are currently negotiating a contract with at Board Direction is more expensive than the previous one. It's a more in-depth processing. So that program's $56,000 increase. So the net of shutting down Sunstreet and moving our operations to Madison Lane is a expenditure reduction of $450,000, and everything else is increasing by $18,000. So total operating budget is increasing by $80,000. Next slide. So this is, as of 9 o'clock this morning, our new updated debt service schedule. Debt service payments of between $3.1 and $3.115 million for the next 9 years. Annual payment is slightly lower than what we went our previous debt service, but we will be able to finish that a year earlier than originally scheduled. Next slide. Our CIP closure budget, we do fund everything over time. So very minor changes, equipment replacement, it's going up like 30,000, and that's just the difference between what we were setting aside at Sunstreet and what we need for the Madison Lane transfer operations. Diversion programs are reduced by $50,000, and that's a reduction in the organics set aside. With the new vendor, some of that stuff will probably not fall on us to replace, so we're reducing that allocation for now. Johnson Canyon landfill improvements, the majority of that is $100,000 for the rolling closure of Johnson Canyon. We used one-time funds this past year to fund this year. But that work to close the first 2 phases of that landfill will take a few years. And that work is being done in conjunction with the new cell excavation, which already has a budget. So this money is just for CQA and other services that aren't really part of that work. We have a slightly reduced tonnage estimate for solid waste, so the new cell set aside is reduced just slightly. Overall, the net of all the CIP changes is additional $50,000. So projected revenue changes, the contract for hauling solid waste from Madison Lane to Johnson Canyon, our estimated tonnage with that contract produced about $2.1 million in revenue. Equalized green waste, along with a per ton increase, is going to be $550,000 in additional revenue. AB 939 fee increase of $173,000. That's $100,000 is for continuing increases in programs, and then a slight $73,000 in CPI adjustment. Sunstreet shutting down, we will not be collecting the transportation surcharge there since we're now hauling for at Madison Lane, so that's going down by $1.2 million. reduction in the solid waste tipping fee, as we've agreed to as part of the Madison Lane hauling contract, and a small reduction in tonnage that's going to reduce that revenue by $850,000. As I mentioned at the beginning, other self-haul tonnage reductions for diversion programs from Sunstreet are going to decrease our revenue by $450,000, and then some other ancillary decreases of total $67,000. So total net revenue is going to increase by $243,000, but there's a lot of shuffling in that process. Next slide. Okay, so there's a lot of numbers here, but there's really two key changes. Solid waste is decreasing from 6850 to 6475, and other ancillary diversion programs are going down. With that price, we can't. It just doesn't work if diversion programs cost more than landfilling. The green waste programs, preliminary estimates show that the cost of the new vendor all in is a little over $60, but we can balance the budget at 57 right now, and we're hopeful that tonnage increases at a rate a little faster than what we're currently have in the budget, and gives a little better economy of scales, and as well as some potential savings in the capital, which could lower their rate down the line. Sludge is no longer ADC, so if it comes to the landfill, we need to treat it as trash. And AB 939 fee increase of $173,000. Next slide. Oh, there is no next slide. So that is my very brief presentation. We are hopeful to be able to bring back a rate hearing and a budget in March. However, there are a couple of unknowns that I know Patrick is negotiating with 3 different bargaining units for salaries and benefits beginning July 1, which could affect that number. But that's it for me, unless there are specific questions I could answer or any concerns with the numbers that I could address.
Thank you, Ray. I do see Patrick is unmuted, so why don't we kick it over to Patrick first?
I have no additional comments on this at this point. I think we'll talk a little bit about the status of the MOUs. Of course, we're working within some budget assumptions that Ray indicated. So, we're trying to stick within those during our discussions. But all in all, I think the budget reflects status quo for the most part going forward, with the exception of the changes, as Ray said, the changes in revenue, sort of the savings and the increases, and really it nets out to just a very small, modest increase in revenue next year. And hopefully we'll see some improvement during the transition after we relocate to Madison, and we'll be able to better project the longer term rate picture once we've had some months of operation there.
Thank you, Patrick. I see Supervisor Phillips' hand up. Supervisor Director Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Good as usual. Just a question. I'm a little concerned with slowing down and getting moving to Madison Lane. If it gets delayed longer than we think it is, will that have any impact on the budget?
It could. Quite frankly, if there, I know there is a contingency in place to still take over their operations beginning July 1, and letting all the franchise head over to Madison Lane and begin that portion. And if absolutely necessary, maintain a small self-haul transfer station until they're ready for us. Quite frankly, we're expecting a 50% reduction in revenue once we shut down Sunstreet. So while I may need an adjustment if we have additional costs for having to keep that open, however long it's necessary for Republic to be ready for us, I would envision that would be enough self-haul revenue to offset any necessary increases.
Okay, thank you.
But hopefully Republic's ready for us, and that's not necessary.
Any other questions from directors? See no hands up, we'll go to the public, see if there's any public input on this presentation. Again, we ask folks to use the raise hand function, *9 via landline to be recognized. Seeing no hands up, we'll close the public comment period and bring it back. This was, I believe, just for input and direction, so no formal action necessary at this point. And we'll proceed into item 7, which is an update on the Sunstreet transfer station relocation project. Patrick, we'll kick it over to you.
Great. Well, this is a two-pronged presentation. I'm going to give you just a quick overview of our first stakeholders meeting. Most of it is in the agenda staff report, but for the benefit of everybody, I'll do an abbreviated overview of that. And then I'll turn it over to Mandy to do a presentation on our upcoming community outreach plan, specifically around the relocation and transition. So we had our first stakeholders meeting a couple of weeks ago. I think it was a very, very productive meeting. We had in attendance Mayor Craig, Councilwoman Cromines. We had Director Tipton, and as well as Judge Phillips, and as well. And then we had staff, obviously senior staff from the authority, from our public services, as well as city staff. We really were focusing on 4 critical issues related to the relocation and the change in public services that we want to make sure the public's aware of. The first issue was really trying to identify a time location for a community meeting to discuss this with some of the Salinas and Baranda residents that will be in the vicinity of the consolidated operation. We've selected a date, not an exact date, but the last week in March. And right now, Erica's working very hard to try to pin down the Baranda Meadows Elementary School administration to see if available dates to use their multi-purpose room, which is right there off of Davis, and a great central location for both the Baranda community and some of the South Salinas community that may want to also participate. So that work is in progress. Agendas are starting to be prepared, and we're just waiting to get that final date pinned down for that community meeting. The second issue, we ask Republic to give us all an update on the status of their improvements. The first phase of improvements, as we've discussed before, are critical to our relocation, or things that have to be done to actually prepare our lease space, as well as to be able to accommodate the expected increase in traffic within the property so that we don't see traffic jams out onto Madison Lane. So they've indicated there's been some, it's been going a little slower than they expected on the design side. They're still waiting for some final design drawings and things from their design team. And at this point, it's looking as though the notice date, which again, just as a reminder, once they give us notice that the lease space is available, then we have 60 days to relocate. And the original date was projected to be March 1st. It now looks like that date is going to be pushed back at least to May 1st, which would mean our relocation would happen right at or just before the start of the new fiscal year, which from Ray's perspective, I think is the ideal circumstance. But we also have, I think, as Ray alluded to, we do have a contingency plan in the event that that date gets pushed any further. That would be for us to send 5 or so of our trucks over to Madison to handle the increase in franchise waste, which will be directed to Madison effective July 1st, and retain 1 truck and if necessary, bring in some outside contract assistance for trucking, and run again just a self-haul facility only at Sunstreet until that work is done. And then we would shift the rest of our transport and all of our recycling resources over to Madison Lane. So we have thought that through and do have a short-term contingency plan in the event that happens. The third topic was really the timing around customer and community noticing and the outreach campaign, which I'll hold off and let Mandy share that with you in a moment. And then finally, just discussing some of the expected impacts and discussing the issues around how those might be addressed. Republic has committed to adding an additional staff person and maybe other resources if necessary to increase litter patrols in and around the primary transportation route into and out of Madison Lane to keep the community looking clean. And I want to personally thank Director Phillips for the work you did with county staff last month. And he has pushed forward 2 referrals. One is to bring back the Rossi Road extension planning and have county staff do a presentation and provide a discussion with the county board on bringing that in, which would really mitigate a lot of these issues because there's a lot of growth expected in that area over the years. And this would provide an alternative commercial industrial ingress and egress to the South Baranda industrial area where Madison Lane and other high traffic businesses are located. So I want to thank you for that. And that I'm glad to see the county bringing that discussion forward proactively as we're preparing for the relocation. And then the second issue was to a referral to the county again to look at increasing enforcement of illegal parking on Madison Lane. That's a critical issue. It's a fairly narrow road, and because of overflow from business parking out there, we have some safety hazards that really need to be addressed, and that is getting people to not park in the illegal parking area. So they're going to be, again, discussing opportunities for increasing enforcement out there and working with the businesses to make the transport corridor in Madison Lane a safer pathway. So with that, I think we had a good meeting. We've got marching orders, and we're working directly with city staff and as well as, and most importantly, with Republic Services for, closing up a few of the items that are remaining on the action list. As Ray said, we're waiting for their council to provide us with the final amendment to terminate the green waste processing agreement, which has been a longstanding issue and it was part of our MOU, and also to provide us with the draft license agreement, which would allow our authority staff to operate the receiving area for organics. And with our discussions with Atlas, that is a very critical part of our operation to make sure that we're pre-cleaning materials, we're identifying problem areas where there's a lot of contamination on routes, and to really be very aggressive with that. And that's part of the 1383 plan, because 70+% of our organic material will be flowing through that transfer station, both Salinas Organics as well as North County Organics. So we want to definitely have our hands on that to make sure it meets the standards our new processor is going to require. And then finally, we're, as Mandy will allude to, we're starting to roll out our public education program, and Republic will be providing us with a full rate schedule for their services so that we can make sure the public's informed about that as well. So all in all, we got a lot of things going on, but we are making progress and looking forward to the new transition coming up in the next few months. So with that, I'll stop for a moment just to see if there's any immediate questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mandy and let her walk you through the public outreach program. Okay, well, seeing no hands, I will turn it over to Mandy.
Sorry, I was getting a call on my iPad. Sorry about that. Thanks, Patrick. And again, good evening to everyone. I'm just going to give a brief presentation on our draft plan for the Sunstreet closure and relocation marketing campaign that we are actively planning for. We will be working with Ad Manor on this campaign, as they were our previous media consultants for the past 13 years and are obviously well-versed in most of our agency branding and previous marketing campaigns. Next slide, please. So the timeline, again, as Patrick had said, is based on that May 1st date, and then the 60-day transition to close Sunstreet and relocate at Madison by July 1st. Obviously, the media plan needs to address several public perceptions. We have nearly 2,000 customers that visit the Sunstreet facility each week. And so we are faced with the challenge of educating our customers and communities about this impending transition. And then we also need to be guiding the public to their new location for HHW and recycling services, as well as also informing them about the disposal options between Madison Lane and Johnson Canyon Landfill. Illegal dumping is another factor that we're looking at taking into consideration for the media planning. Customers who visit Sunstreet after the closure may be frustrated to find out that it's no longer there and resort to illegal dumping either at Sunstreet or somewhere else in the community, and we'd like to help prevent that. Our plan is to use a dynamic countdown clock, like a 60-day clock that will obviously begin once Madison Lane improvements are completed. And of course, any delays in that completion of improvements will just push back this relocation timeline for the media campaign. Next slide. So based on a revised timeline, we are beginning creative development and media planning that's happening this month. And the plan is to finalize production in April. So all of our messaging is ready to air starting May 1st. The second phase of the media messaging will also obviously follow in July. Again, the theme of this campaign is a countdown to closure with some kind of countdown clock or other visual display that will also be on our website as well as the facility. We're also looking at holding ceremonial closure event at Sunstreet, as well as several customer appreciation days before closure at Sunstreet. And then we'd also like to work with Republic on a possible grand opening or some kind of ribbon cutting ceremony at Madison Lane once we are there. Next slide. We plan to leverage our owned media, so things that we've already worked on and have in the or already have in our campaign closet, I guess you could call it, and resources to deliver that message to our current customers and any of our friends or followers. And we'll do that through our e-newsletter and email distribution lists. We will put up site signage and scale house messaging, VIP mailers and postcards, as well as social media posts. As I mentioned, we'll have that countdown digital clock to feature an up to the minute time remaining at Sunstreet. We'll also be working on updating all of our online profiles using Google or the Yelp listings that we're in. And we'll also update the What Goes Where app to ensure that Sunstreet is no longer listed on there. Next slide. So the primary target audience for our paid media is Hispanic head of households aged 25 to 54 in proximities to Salinas. Secondary target audience is all adults aged 25 to 54 and again, proximity to Salinas. Phase 1 will focus on the closure of Sunstreet and relocation of our household hazardous waste facility and recycling services. And then phase 2 will actually focus on promoting the HHW and recycling services at Madison Lane. The media plan will include print media, radio, digital media ads, digital banner displays on websites, and promoted social media posts. Next slide. So the post-closure campaign will focus on continuing to educate and train the public to visit Madison Lane or offer Johnson Canyon after Sunstreet is closed. 60 to 90 days following that relocation, we will promote Salinas Valley Recycles HHW and recycling services, obviously now at Madison Lane, promoting the messages of safety and importance of the services provided, which is very similar to what we've done in the past for our Sunstreet transfer station awareness campaigns. And then we will also leverage some of that owned media in our Salinas Valley Cares ads, which helps promote free services available to the community. The ongoing campaign will predominantly be the permanent bilingual signage at Sunstreet, which our plan is to have large signs that include maps, QR codes, addresses for Madison and Johnson Canyon, as well as notifications about consequences of illegal dumping. And that is the presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I see a hand up from Mayor Craig.
Hi there. Do we have an idea of how many of our customers that go through Sunstreet are Spanish speaking?
I'm gonna say probably about 70% of them.
Yeah, that was going to be my guess.
So something to just be aware of, and Mandy certainly knows this, but I spent 20 years doing media planning. And one of the things you want to be very specific about when you're choosing your media is Nielsen ratings and Arbitron ratings categorize Hispanic, but not necessarily Spanish speaking. And so it will be very important for you to determine what audience you're trying to reach, because we have third and fourth and even fifth generation residents who consider themselves to be Hispanic but don't speak Spanish, or have some level of bilingual, or are Spanish speaking only. And I think in terms of the media plan that you put together, that's going to be really important, because there are a lot of people that say, oh, we have a large Hispanic audience, but if the target is the people who are coming to Sunstreet who are Spanish speaking only, that's going to be a very small targeted audience that you want to be aware of.
Yes, good. Very good point. Thank you for the
And
input.
I should clarify that it's not a small percentage of people, but it's a small targeted audience in media. So that part's really, like KSBW will say that they have Hispanic viewing audience for Jeopardy, but that's a very different audience than Univision or La Tricolor Radio or whatever that looks like. So just make sure that the ad agency that you're using has that clarification, because when you're looking at ratings, you'll go, oh, we'll go with them. But the reality is you don't have a lot of Spanish speaking audience in some of that programming. So just be careful about that.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor Craig. I think I might just ask you to repeat all those names again. That was awesome. Okay, I'm going to go to Councilmember Roach. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little more clarification on what the mayor just said. So is your comments or directions aimed at getting the authority to invest more money in Spanish literature and the translation of Spanish services? When you say a small targeted audience, what does that translate in terms of the direction you're asking or advice you're giving?
So my advice is take a look at who's using Sunstreet and then figure out where they are and what media they're using. I think there's a lot of like inflated numbers of people who consider themselves to be Hispanic, or have a Hispanic background, but if it's that 70% of the people coming through only speak Spanish, then that's a very small number of programs. Like that's and I want to be careful with how I say it. It's just, you're not going to be advertising on 90 Day Fiance, but 90 Day Fiance may be, suggesting that they have a Hispanic audience. My point is you want to make sure that it's a Spanish speaking targeted audience that you are advertising to.
So what I'm hearing is if you're going to be spending money on Spanish television or radio, put it on the airwaves that target that particular demographic so that the impact is far greater.
Right. Or it could be particular programming that I'm not aware of. My point is that's what the ad agency does, but it's one of those like weird little things that you just want to make sure that you're clear with the ad agency, because in Mandy's presentation, she says that there's, people who consider themselves their primary target is Hispanic people. Well, is it Hispanic people, or is it Spanish speaking only, or is it bilingual, or what is that percentage? And then match the media plan to that.
Yeah, I would jump on that and support that and say that when you're talking about a Spanish speaking audience, they may not know who Dan Green is, but they do know who Adriana Frederick Sutton is. And so, we want to make sure that we're putting our dollars in the appropriate stations that actually people do watch on a regular basis. But I wanted to ask a specific question on the amount of money that's going to go into the promotion campaign.
Yes. So maybe one point of clarification is that we've been working in the community and advertising, branding campaigns for, well over 15 years. And Ad Manor is the one who's helping us with this campaign. And so over the years, we have worked to provide targeted outreach and ads specifically to Spanish speaking folks. And we found that Spanish radio is the most, we get more bang for our buck on Spanish radio than we do on Spanish TV. So we will stick to Spanish only speaking radio stations specifically for this campaign. But thank you for the input and advice. I appreciate that. And then to address Director Roach's comments or question, it's approximately $40,000 that we are looking at spending on this campaign. It was part of our existing budget, so we're not asking for any additional money to do that. It's already existing, and it's being funded through a CIP since it's a one-time cost.
$40,000 countywide for the education and the transition for SB 1383?
No, this is only specifically for this campaign to close Sunstreet and relocate some of our services to Madison Lane.
Okay.
1383 is a whole different topic than this campaign. This is just focusing on Sunstreet.
And maybe perhaps Mayor Craig can jump in a little bit more. I'll just let you know, I spent $40,000 on my city council campaign for one portion of the city of Salinas. And so perhaps we might want to look at expanding that. That's not what this discussion is about, but just that number seems a little bit low, considering it's a significant change. And one of the concerns that came up a lot was people wanting to avoid illegal dumping. And so I think that number is a little bit low, but I'm not a media planner myself. I just remember how much I spent on trying to promote my campaign. So I'm not the expert in that field.
All right, Mandy, I just wanted to share a little, maybe a request here, and maybe we can also invest in renting one of those large street signs where you can deliver a message. I think having it there maybe the month before you guys. So the first request was actually as folks pull in, I know that we greet folks and they roll down their window and we kind of take a look at what they're bringing in and then we direct them. At that point, I think it'd be good to have a handout specifically in English and Spanish that we can hand them that's got some bold language at the top. And then also just that, like the orange roadside stands maybe for the month before, getting them out on John Street. Is that John? No, I'm blanking on the street name.
Commission?
No, why am I blanking on the exit name there? It's not an exit. You come back.
Market Street.
Market.
Oh, Market.
That's what I'm thinking. Market, kind of for folks going in both directions. I think it'd be good to just let them know so that for a lot of folks that come through there, I know it's repeat business. I used to frequent that station a lot and made quite a few friends there as we dumped wood into the pile together many weekends. So I think just the frequent touches are important. I agree. Radio is important. Spanish language radio, you've already got that as part of your plan, and I wholeheartedly support that. I know that there's several stations like Radio Láser and El Tricolor that are historical, wonderful stations that people tune into during the work week. La Campesina is also one of those that folks pay attention to. So I support that approach. I think that that'll get us great inundation and our target market. And obviously then word will run around and half the people will get upset and post something on Facebook and say, I came here, nobody's here. And that in itself is an educational opportunity. So perhaps monitoring the community Facebook pages as people start to knee-jerk react, and we can share, here's where we went and we've been publishing it for 60 days. Thanks for letting us know. We didn't do good enough of a job, but come out and see us at the new location, spin it into a positive. I know it's always a great way to go on those pages. So any other directors want to give some input on this item? Okay, seeing no hands up, we'll take it out to the public and see if there's any members of the public who wish to share comments on this particular item this evening. Again, we ask folks to use a raise hand function, *9 via landline to be recognized. Seeing no hands going up, we'll close the public comment period, bring it back. And this was an informational item as well, is that correct? information
Yes.
only.
At this point,
Okay.
yes, continue to update the board monthly on the progress of the relocation and as well as any outreach materials and things that as they start to roll out, so that you can have those at your hands available to share with your constituents. And so we just keep that message going for the next several months, both prior to, and likely we may come back and continue to extend and budget for a continued extension of this outreach, because not all customers come every week or every month. And so we're going to want to have at least some continuance of outreach related to the relocation for people that didn't get the message the first time. So
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick. And I did hear Director Roach's questions about the budget number. And so maybe as we move forward, an update on where we are on the spend, I think would be great to ask the question of, have you heard it as a director? Have we reached the right markets? And let us know when it starts running so we can tune into the right radio stations to see if it's hitting at the right times of day. But thank you for the presentation. And thank you, Mandy, for your work. We know it's not easy, and hopefully there's some lessons here on 1383 too to roll out into those goals in the near future. All right, then we're going to roll forward into our future agenda items, which is our look ahead calendar, and we're going to kick that over to Patrick.
all right, well, again, pretty standard consent items. I think at some point though, we'll discuss this with the EC about going back to all live meetings. I think I'm not anticipating, unless someone has heard elsewise, that the 361 will be extended beyond the March deadline. So I don't know if the board would entertain having me put that on the agenda for a formal discussion, or the EC would like to provide a recommendation to the full board on how we want to handle meetings after March. So that item will likely be a point of discussion going forward. We also have, as Mandy said earlier, our Atlas agreement. I want to just take an opportunity to thank Roy for the incredible work he's done educating Atlas's legal team on California laws. I think that's been sort of the challenge here, is this is their first foray into California, and many of our laws around liability and indemnification are a little different than what they're used to in other states. And I think that's added to the delay, but Roy's been stellar in assisting staff and I on that. So that will come back. We think we've just about crossed over the threshold of anything difficult left to work on. We'll have this ready for the next meeting. Of course, we have the budget hearing and the public and the rate hearing relative to the proposed rates that you've seen from Ray now a couple of times, and final adoption of the budget. And I don't believe we're going to have any operating budget mid-year budget adjustments, but we left that in there as a placeholder in the event there's anything identified, but I don't believe we're going to have anything, and Ray can confirm that.
It is definitely not coming back in March. At this point, I don't foresee us needing any mid-year budget adjustments, but if something does come up, we'll address that later on in the year.
Okay, great. And of course, the update on the relocation of our AB 939 and HHW programs over to Madison Lane. Will continue to provide a monthly update to both the EC and the board on that. And then the same items, we're deep into MOU negotiations, and we'll be needing board input on that, some tonight and definitely a lot in the month of March. So with that, if there's any questions, comments, additions, edits to the look ahead agenda, particularly for March, now's a good time. Otherwise, you can reach out to Eric and I later on, and we'll be happy to consider any modifications.
Thanks, Patrick. Anybody want to share comments at this point from the board? All right, seeing no hands, we'll take it out to the public for any input on this item. Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Again, that was informational. So at this point, we are at our closed session agenda. And there are 4 items this evening. We're looking at items 9 through 12 pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8 to confer with legal counsel and real property negotiators, General Manager CAO Patrick Matthews, Assistant GM Ops Manager Cesar Zuniga, Finance and Administration Manager Ray Hendricks, and General Counsel Roy Santos concerning the possible terms and conditions and acquisition of lease exchange or sale of property APNs listed below with addresses 126 Sunstreet, Salinas, California, 910 South Main Street, Salinas, California, 1584 Moffett Street, Salinas, California. That's item 9. Item 10 is pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 to provide instruction to General Manager Patrick Matthews, GM Ops Manager Cesar Zuniga, and Counsel Roy Santos to negotiate salaries and benefits of non-management administration unit. Item 11, 54957.6 to provide instruction to General Manager CAO Patrick Matthews, Assistant GM Ops Manager Cesar Zuniga, and General Counsel Roy Santos to negotiate salaries and benefits of Operations and Engineering Unit. And item 12 this evening is pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 to provide instruction to General Manager CAO Patrick Matthews, General Counsel Roy Santos to negotiate salaries and benefits of at-will management employees. So those are items 9 through 12. I want to give an opportunity for the public to share comments regarding these closed session items. We ask that you use the raise hand function, *9 via landline, in order to share those comments if you have any, and this would be the appropriate time. Seeing no hands, we will close the public comment portion for our closed session agenda and bring it back. We will now recess into closed session. Patrick, you want to give a time frame generally when we might be expected to come back? You're muted.
Sorry, President, 20 to 30 minutes.
All right, so 20 to 30 minutes at 6:52, and we are recessing into closed session. For board members, you did receive an email with the closed session link from Erica earlier this afternoon. So we will see you all in closed session. Thank you. Okay, I think everyone or nearly everyone is back. Erica, can you confirm that we have a quorum?
We have a quorum.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and reconvene our board of directors back into open session and turn to county. Sorry, Roy, just gave you a new title there. Turn to general counsel and see if we have anything to report out of closed session this evening.
Nothing to report out at this time, Mr. President.
All right, seeing nothing to report out, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Stay
Night.
safe.
Night.
Night, thank you.
Good night.